In the heart of Chicago's glittering skyline, where steel towers pierced the clouds like ambitious dreams, lived Elijah Thompson, a man whose life was a testament to resilience and reinvention. At 44 years old, Elijah was no ordinary entrepreneur. He was a tech billionaire with a net worth of $2.5 billion. The founder and CEO of Thomson Innovations, a powerhouse in algorithms and aerospace tech that had revolutionized everything from data security to satellite navigation. His skin, a rich mahogany hue, bore the subtle scars of a life forged in the fires of adversity. From his humble beginnings in a South Side neighborhood to the boardrooms where he now commanded respect. But beneath the sharp suits and the confident stride, Elijah carried a story of profound personal struggle, one that had shaped him more than any business deal ever could. It had been 8 long, agonizing years of trying to build a family with his wife, Risha. She was his anchor, a 42-year-old educator and advocate for underprivileged youth, with eyes that sparkled like polished onyx and a laugh that could light up the darkest rooms. They had met in college, two ambitious black students navigating a world that often seemed stacked against them. Their love was fierce, unyielding, but the dream of parenthood had tested it to its limits. Month after month, year after year, the negative pregnancy tests piled up like silent accusations. IVF treatments became a ritual of hope and heartbreak needles, hormones, and endless doctor's appointments that drained their savings and their spirits. Elijah remembered one night vividly, a memory that still haunted him like a shadow in the corner of his mind. It was 3 years into their struggle, in the dim light of their modest apartment before the billions rolled in. Aisha had sat on the edge of their bed, clutching yet another failed test, her tears falling silently onto the cold tile floor. "I can't do this anymore, Elijah," she had whispered, her voice cracking like fragile glass. "Every time we try, it feels like we're losing a piece of ourselves. Maybe we're not meant to be parents. Maybe we're not meant to be together." The words had hit him like a punch to the gut. He had knelt before her, his hands enveloping hers, feeling the tremble in her fingers. "Aisha, you're my everything," he had pleaded. "This pain, it's not us, it's just a storm. We'll weather it. I'll build us a future where this doesn't define us." That night, they had argued until dawn, voices rising and falling like waves in a tempest. She had threatened to leave, packing a bag in a fit of despair, but as the first light of morning crept through the curtains, they had collapsed into each other's arms, vowing to fight on. It was that raw vulnerability that had pushed Elijah deeper into his work, channeling his grief into code and innovation. His algorithms, born from sleepless nights, had exploded into success, turning Thomson Innovations into a juggernaut. But the nursery in their home remained empty, a heartbreaking reminder of what they ached for most. Then the miracle happened. After countless failures, the IVF worked not 1 child, but 3. Identical triplets, their heartbeats flickering on the ultrasound screen like stars igniting in the night sky. Elijah had fainted right there in the doctor's office, his world spinning with joy and terror. Aisha had laughed through her tears, her hand on her belly as if to protect the fragile lives within. The boys arrived prematurely, a whirlwind of cries and medical monitors. Malik came first, strong and vocal, already showing the leadership traits that would define him. Tariq followed, calm and observant, with a gentle soul that mirrored his mother's empathy. And then Jamal, the smallest, who emerged silent and blue, his tiny body fighting a battle no newborn should face. Pyloric stenocyste learned the term quickly, a condition where the muscle between the stomach and small intestine thickened, blocking food passage. At just 6 weeks old, Jamal underwent emergency surgery, his fragile frame hooked to machines in the NICU. Elijah and Aisha took shifts, holding vigil by his incubator, whispering prayers and promises. Twice, they nearly lost him, once to a severe infection post-surgery and again to dehydration when his body rejected feeds. "He's a fighter," the doctor, Carla Ruiz, had said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the gravity. But he'll need careful management, more frequent meals for life, or the vomiting could become life-threatening. Jamal pulled through, emerging with a medical bracelet that became his constant companion, engraved with his condition and emergency contacts. The experience bonded the family indelibly, turning their home into a sanctuary of love and vigilance. Now, at 10 years old, the triplets were Elijah's world, miracles wrapped in boundless energy and curiosity. Malik, the natural leader, had his father's sharp mind, always organizing games and negotiating with his brothers like a mini CEO. Tariq, the peacemaker, inherited Aisha's gentle heart, quick to sense emotions and diffuse tensions with a hug or a kind word. And Jamal, the gentle soul who had endured so much, dreamed of soaring through the skies. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot," he would say, his eyes wide as he traced airplanes in the clouds from their penthouse balcony. "Like Bessie Coleman, first black woman to fly. I'll take us all around the world, and no one will tell me I can't." Elijah would ruffle his hair, pride swelling in his chest, but always with a twinge of protectiveness. Knowing Jamal's condition required meticulous planning, meals every 2 hours, emergency kits, and anti-nausea meds. Their life was one of privilege now, in a sprawling estate overlooking Lake Michigan, but it was grounded in gratitude. Elijah had poured his wealth into causes close to his heart: scholarships for black STEM students, fertility clinics for low-income families. For months ago, he had expanded his empire by acquiring 65% of Horizon Airways, a mid-tier airline struggling post-pandemic. It wasn't just business, it was a chance to innovate in aviation, blending his tech people with flight safety. And now he was taking the boys on their first business trip to Los Angeles to tour the new aerospace division. It was more than a vacation, it was a rite of passage, a way to share his success with the sons he had waited so long to hold. The morning of the flight dawned crisp and clear, September's golden light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their home. Aisha bustled in the kitchen, packing Jamal's medical kit with crackers, juice boxes, and medications. "You boys be good for your dad," she said, pulling them into a group hug. Malik grinned, adjusting his red polo shirt. "Mom, we're going to see real planes up close." Tariq nodded enthusiastically, holding Jamal's hand, a habit born from years of watching over their brother during his rough days. Jamal beamed, his medical bracelet glinting under the lights. "And Dad said I can sit by the window to watch takeoff." Elijah watched them, his heart full. He had called Horizon Airways weeks ahead, explaining Jamal's needs, providing Dr. Ruse's documentation, and confirming special meals. "Everything will be perfect," the representative had assured him. As they loaded into the chauffeured SUV headed to O'Hare Airport, Elijah knelt to their level, a ritual from those terrifying NICU nights. "Remember, stay close, use your inside voices, and Jamal, stick to your schedule." Every 2 hours, small bites, the boys nodded solemnly, their identical dark eyes reflecting his own. This trip was about adventure, but for Elijah, it was about proving that their family hard-won and unbreakable could conquer the world. Little did he know, as the car pulled away, that the skies ahead held not just clouds but a storm of prejudice and peril that would test every ounce of his resolve. But in that moment, with the city blurring past and his son's laughter filling the air, life felt like the miracle it truly was. The hum of the city faded into the distance as the chauffeured SUV glided toward O'Hare International Airport, carrying Elijah Thompson and his 3 miracle sons into what promised to be an unforgettable adventure. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the expressway, turning the skyline into a shimmering backdrop of steel and glass. Inside the vehicle, the air buzzed with excitement. Malik, the eldest by mere minutes, pressed his face against the tinted window, his red polo shirt crisp and his dark jeans neatly cuffed. "Dad, how fast do planes really go? Like, faster than a race car?" he asked, his voice brimming with the unfiltered curiosity of a 10-year-old on the cusp of discovery. Elijah chuckled from the front seat, glancing back at his boys through the rearview mirror. Faster than you can imagine, Malik. Over 500 miles per hour once they're cruising. But remember, it's not just about speed, it's about the journey. Tariq, sitting in the middle, nodded sagely, his gentle eyes scanning a picture book about airplanes he'd insisted on bringing. I like the clouds best. They look like giant cotton balls from up there. Jamal, on the end, fidgeted slightly, his medical bracelet catching the light as he clutched a small backpack embroidered with his name. He was quieter than his brothers, but his smile was radiant. And I get to see the engines up close when we land, right? Like real pilots do, the drive was smooth, a far cry from the chaotic commutes Elijah remembered from his early days scraping by in tech startups. Now, with Thompson Innovations soaring, he could afford these luxurious net for show, but to create memories with the family he'd fought so hard to build. As the SUV pulled into the airport's executive drop-off, Elijah felt a familiar surge of protectiveness. This wasn't just any trip, it was their first as a family unit venturing into the world beyond their safe haven in Chicago. Los Angeles awaited, with its promise of sun-soaked tour of the new aerospace division he'd acquired for Horizon Airways. But more than business, this was about showing his sons the heights they could reach, literally and figuratively. The airport terminal loomed ahead, a bustling hive of travelers rushing with suitcases and coffee cups. Elijah stepped out first, his black business suit impeccable, and helped the boys unload their backpacks. Each one was identical except for the embroidered names: Malik's in bold red, Tariq's in soothing blue, Jamal's in vibrant green, a nod to his resilient spirit. "Stick together, boys," Elijah instructed, his voice firm but warm. Airports are like big puzzle slots of pieces moving at once. The triplets nodded in unison, their identical dark eyes wide with awe as they entered the sliding doors. The cool blast of air-conditioned air welcoming them like an old friend. Check-in was seamless, thanks to Elijah's status. The agent, a young woman with a bright smile, scanned their boarding passes for Horizon Airways Flight 447. "First class to Lax looks like a smooth ride today, Mr. Thompson. And these must be the famous triplets I've heard about." She winked at the boys, who beamed back. Elijah had called ahead weeks ago, detailing Jamal's pyloric stenosis and requesting special meals, small portions every 2 hours with crackers and juice on standby. He'd emailed Dr. Carla Ruz's documentation, ensuring everything was in order. "We've got it all set," the agent confirmed, handing over the passes. "Your son's needs are noted in the system. The crew will take good care of him." As they made their way through security, the boys chattered endlessly. Malik led the way, pretending to be a tour guide. "This is where they check for bad guys' stuff," he explained dramatically, earning giggles from his brothers. Tariq held Jamal's hand, a quiet gesture of solidarity that had become second nature during Jamal's tougher days. Elijah watched them, his heart swelling. These moments, mundane yet magical, were what he dreamed of during those 8 barren years. But as they cleared the scanners, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught his attention. A few glances lingered a bit too long, an older couple whispering, a businessman eyeing their first-class tags with a raised eyebrow. Elijah brushed it off. He'd faced worse in boardrooms. Still, it planted a seed of caution in his mind. The terminal was alive with the symphony of announcements and rolling luggage. To pass the time before boarding, Elijah led them to a quiet lounge reserved for elite flyers. There, amid plush seats and complimentary snacks, an unexpected encounter added a spark to their morning. As the boys settled in with apple juice and fruit, a familiar face approached. Jasmine Hale, the renowned R&B singer whose hits had topped charts for years. She was traveling incognito in a baseball cap and oversized sunglasses, but her warm aura was unmistakable. "Oh my goodness, look at these handsome young men," she exclaimed, spotting the triplets. "You three look like you're ready to take over the world." Malik's eyes lit up. "Are you?" Jasmine Hale, from the songs on the radio. Jasmine laughed, a melodic sound that drew smiles from nearby loungers, guilty as charged. And you must be on a big adventure. She knelt to their level, chatting effortlessly. Jamal, usually shy, opened up about his pilot dreams. I want to fly planes like Bessie Coleman, he said softly. Jasmine's face softened. That's incredible. Bessie was a trailblazer, just like you'll be. Keep dreaming big, okay? She posed for a quick photo with them, her genuine kindness turning the lounge into a mini celebration. Elijah thanked her, appreciating the positive interaction. It was a reminder that not every stranger's gaze held judgment. But as they left the lounge for the gate, the undercurrent of subtle prejudice resurfaced. At the boarding area, a middle-aged woman in line ahead of them turned, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Elijah and the boys. First class with kids, hope they're behaved, she muttered to her companion, loud enough to carry. Elijah's jaw tightened, but he chose silence, focusing on his sons. He learned long ago that responding to every microaggression drained energy better spent elsewhere. Instead, he knelt again, adjusting Jamal's backpack. Excited, buddy? Remember your scheduled snack in 2 hours once we're up. Jamal nodded, his small hand slipping into Elijah's. Yeah, Dad. This is gonna be the best day ever. Boarding began, and the family was among the first ushered into the sleek cabin of Horizon Airways Flight 447. The first-class seats were spacious havens of leather and luxury, with ample legroom and personal screens. Malik immediately fiddled with the controls, reclining his seat with glee. Tariq marveled at the window view of the tarmac, planes taxiing like giant birds. Jamal carefully stowed his medical kit in the seat pocket, his face alight with anticipation. Elijah settled in beside them, pointing out safety features: oxygen masks, life vests with the patience of a father who cherished every teaching moment. As the plane filled, the flight attendants made their rounds. Vanessa Carter, the senior attendant with 15 years of experience, approached with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was polished, her uniform impeccable, but there was a stiffness in her demeanor as she eyed the black family in the premium seats. "Welcome aboard," she said curtly, barely glancing at Elijah's extended hand. He introduced himself and the boys, then politely reiterated Jamal's medical needs, showing the documentation on his phone. Vanessa nodded dismissively. "We'll handle it per policy." Lisa Nguyen, the junior attendant, seemed more approachable, offering water with a genuine nod. "Let us know if you need anything," she said, though she cast a nervous glance at Vanessa. The engines roared to life and the plane taxied down the runway. The boys pressed their faces to the windows, gasping as the ground fell away and Chicago shrank beneath them. Elijah leaned back, a sense of peace washing over him. For now, everything was perfect, adventure unfolding just as he'd hoped. But as the seatbelt sign dimmed and the first hints of turbulence jostled the cabin, he couldn't shake the faint unease from those terminal glances. Little did he know, the real turbulence was yet to come, brewing in the biases of those meant to ensure their safety. As the cabin door sealed with a definitive hiss, Horizon Airways Flight 447 began its slow taxi toward the runway, the engines humming like a promise of escape. Elijah Thompson settled deeper into his first-class seat, the plush leather cradling him as he watched his sons absorb the novelty of it all. Malik, ever the explorer, was already experimenting with the seat's recline button, letting out a delighted whoop as it tilted back. "This is like a spaceship, Dad. Can we pretend we're launching to the moon?" Tariq, beside him, gazed out the window at the ground crew waving wands of light, his picture book forgotten in his lap. "Look at all the people down there like ants," and Jamal, closest to the aisle, carefully arranged his medical kit in the pocket ahead, his small fingers tracing the zipper with the familiarity of routine. "Dad, when do we get the snacks?" "My tummy's okay now, but in a bit." Elijah smiled, ruffling Jamal's hair. "Soon, buddy. We've got it all planned." He had chosen first class not for the prestigio his billions afforded it, but for the practicality. More space meant easier access to Jamal's needs, and the promised service would make managing his pyloric stenosis a breeze. Weeks of preparation had gone into this. calls to the airline, emails with doctor. Carla Ruse's signed letters detailing the condition thickened stomach muscle that demanded small, frequent meals to prevent acid buildup, nausea, and worse. The representative had been emphatic. Mr. Thompson will have everything ready. Special trays every 2 hours, no problem. The cabin crew began their pre-flight routine, moving with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Vanessa Carter, the senior flight attendant, led the way. At 48, with 15 years of skies under her belt, she exuded authority, her uniform starched to perfection, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. But as she approached row 1, her eyes lingered on Elijah and the boys. A black man in a tailored suit, 3 identical kids in red palas and dark gensumething in her stirred. An old reflex from her upbringing in a small Midwestern town where certain folks were assumed to be out of place in upscale settings. She'd seen it all, demanding passengers, entitled families. In her mind, this one screamed trouble, probably using some corporate perk to upgrade, she thought, dismissing the platinum card he'd flashed at check-in. "Good morning," she said, her tone clipped as Elijah extended a hand in greeting. "I'm Vanessa, your lead attendant today." Elijah shook her hand firmly, his voice steady and professional. "Elijah Thompson, and these are my sons Malik, Tariq, and Jamal." He gestured to each, the boys offering polite waves. "I appreciate you all accommodating Jamal's medical condition. He's got pyloric stenosis, needs small meals every 2 hours. I've got the documentation here if you'd like to review it again." He pulled up the email on his tablet, the screen glowing with Dr. Ruse's letterhead and detailed instructions. Vanessa glanced at it briefly, her lips pursing, noted, "We'll follow standard procedures." Inside, her thoughts raced. Another one with a special request, probably exaggerating for freebies. She dealt with hypochondriac parents before, coaching kids to milk the system. No way she'd bend rules on her watch, not for anyone who didn't fit the usual first-class profile. She moved on without another word, her heels clicking sharply on the carpet. Lisa Nguyen, the junior attendant, followed close behind. Younger, with just 2 years in the air, she had a warmer demeanor, dark hair in a ponytail, a genuine smile that crinkled her eyes. "Hi there," she said, kneeling slightly to meet the boys' gazes. "I'm Lisa. Anything I can get you before takeoff? Water, maybe?" Malik piped up immediately. "Can we have headphones for the movies?" Lisa nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely, I'll grab some," as Elijah reiterated Jamal's needs to her, showing the same docs. Lisa's expression turned attentive. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure the galley knows," but as she straightened, she caught Vanessa's disapproving glance from across the cabine, a silent warning not to overcome it. Lisa swallowed, her confidence wavering. She wanted to do right, but Vanessa's seniority loomed like a shadow. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a smooth flight ahead, 6 hours to Lax, clear skies all the way. The plane accelerated down the runway, the boys gripping their armrests in unison. "Here we go," Tariq whispered, his hand finding Jamal's. The thrust pressed them back, and then liftoff. Chicago tilted away below, buildings shrinking to toy size as they pierced the clouds. Jamal's face was glued to the window, his breath fogging the glass. "It's like flying in my dreams, Dad," he said softly, his voice laced with wonder. "Last night, I dreamed I was a pilot, zooming over the ocean with Malik and Tariq as my co-pilots. We had a big plane, all red like our shirts. And no one could stop us." Elijah's heart ached with love. Jamal's dreams were his armor against the condition that had stolen so much of his early childhood. "One day, you'll make that real, son." Just like Bessie Coleman, the seatbelt sign chimed off and the cabin settled into a gentle hum. Passengers rustled papers, screens flickered to life. For the first hour, all was bliss. Malik dove into an animated movie, Tariq sketched clouds in his notebook, and Jamal nibbled on a pre-packed cracker from his kit, timing it perfectly from their airport snack. Elijah worked quietly on his laptop, reviewing acquisition docs for Horizon Airways' 65% stake, a recent coup that would integrate his tech into their fleet. But as the 2-hour mark approached, Jamal shifted uncomfortably, his hand pressing his stomach. "Dad, it's time. My tummy's starting to feel funny." His internal clock was precise, honed by years of necessity. Without those small feeds, the cramps would build, leading to nausea that could spiral fast. Elijah nodded reassuringly. "Press the call button, Jamal. They'll bring your special tray." Jamal hesitated, then reached up, the light illuminating above their seats. Lisa arrived first, her smile tentative. "Yes, sir. How can I help?" Jamal spoke up politely, just as his parents had taught. Miss, could I have my crackers, please?" "The ones for my condition." He held up his bracelet, the engraving clear. Jamal Thompson, pyloric stenosis. "Frequent feeding required. Emergency contact doctor." Carla Ruiz, Lisa's brow furrowed in momentary confusion. She remembered the note but hadn't prepped yet. She glanced toward the galley, where Vanessa was organizing carts. "Meal service starts in about an hour, but..." "Let me check." Before she could move, Vanessa overheard and strode over, her presence commanding. "Is there a problem here?" Her tone was sharp, laced with an edge that made nearby passengers look up. Elijah interjected calmly, "No problem, just following up on the prearranged meals for my son. He's got a documented medical need." He showed the tablet again, but Vanessa waved it off, arms crossing defensively. "Everyone waits for service, no exceptions. We can't have passengers demanding special treatment." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Elijah felt a flicker of irritation but kept his composure. Had built an empire on patience. "It's not a demand, it's a necessity. Without regular feeds, he risks severe vomiting and dehydration." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her internal bias flaring. "Special treatment. In first class, they always think they're entitled." "Sir, our policies are clear. We'll serve when ready." She turned away, leaving Lisa standing awkwardly. I'll see what I can do," Lisa murmured, but her voice lacked conviction, intimidated by her superior. The cabin grew quieter as the interaction lingered in the air. Jamal slumped back, his face paling slightly. "Did I do something wrong, Dad?" Elijah pulled him close. "No, son, absolutely not." Adults sometimes forget to listen, but inside, Elijah's mind raced notes, timestamps, a mental log forming. The boys tried to distract themselves, Jamal sharing another snippet of his dream. "In my plane, we'd have snacks for everyone, all the time. No waiting." His brothers laughed, but the tension simmered. An hour ticked by, the plane slicing through wisps of cloud. Jamal's discomfort grew subtle at first, a hand on his belly, then fidgeting. The cramps were starting, acid building in his empty stomach. Elijah pressed the call button again, but Vanessa's response was curt over the intercom. "Service imminent." Passengers nearby exchanged glances, a woman across the aisle. A pediatric nurse by her lanyard leaned over. "Everything okay?" Elijah nodded politely, but the seed of unease from the terminal had sprouted. This wasn't just poor service, it felt personal, rooted in something darker. As the meal carts finally rumbled forward, Vanessa approached with trays for others first, skipping their route deliberately. "Patience," she said under her breath. Jamal whispered to Elijah, "It hurts a little now." The first real sign of trouble had emerged, a crack in the facade of their perfect trip. Little did they know, this was merely the prelude to a storm that would test the limits of a father's love and a billionaire's power. As the minutes stretched into an agonizing limbo aboard Horizon Airways Flight 447, the cabin's ambient hum did little to mask the growing tension in Row 1. Elijah Thompson glanced at his watch. 12 hours and 15 minutes since takeoff, well past Jamal's feeding window. The boy's face had lost its earlier glow, replaced by a pallor that Elijah knew all too well from those harrowing NICU nights. Jamal shifted in his seat, small hands clutching his stomach, his red polo shirt now slightly rumpled from the discomfort. "Dad, It really hurts now, he whispered, his voice a fragile thread in the din of the plane. Elijah's heart clenched like a fist. He pressed the call button again, the light flickering on like a beacon of hope amid the indifference. "Hang in there, son. We'll get this sorted," but inside, a storm brewed. Memories flooded him and bitten, the sterile glow of hospital lights, Jamal's tiny body wired to machines after his 6-week surgery. The beeps of monitors echoing like accusations during those 2 near-fatal episodes. The first time an infection had ravaged his son's fragile system, turning his skin fever hot and his cries weak. Elijah had paced the halls, bargaining with whatever higher power might listen, while Aisha wept by the incubator. The second, dehydration from failed feeds, had left Jamal limp and unresponsive, his electrolytes crashing. "He's stabilizing, doctor," Ruiz had said then, but the fear had etched permanent lines in Elijah's soul. Now, at 30,000 feet, that same terror resurfaced, not from illness alone, but from human callousness. Lisa Nguyen arrived first this time, her steps hesitant, a tray of beverages in hand. "Yes, Mr. Thompson." Elijah leaned forward, his voice measured but urgent. "My son needs his meal now. It's been over 2 hours, can't wait for regular service. His pyloric stenosis means acid builds up quickly. We're risking a medical emergency." Jamal, brave as ever, lifted his bracelet again. "Please, miss. Just some crackers, I promise I won't ask for more." Lisa's eyes darted to the galley, conflict evident. She remembered the manifest note, but Vanessa's earlier dismissal lingered like a command. I'll check with the lead." Before she could retreat, Vanessa materialized, her presence a wall of authority. "What's the issue now?" Her tone was laced with exasperation, as if this family were a persistent nuisance rather than paying passengers. Elijah met her gaze steadily, pulling up the documentation once more. "No issue, just fulfilling the pre-arranged accommodation. Here's the confirmation email from your airline and Dr. Ruiz's letter. This isn't a preference, it's life-threatening without intervention." Vanessa crossed her arms, barely glancing at the screen. In her mind, the narrative was set, a demanding father, kids playing up for perks. She'd grown up in a world where assumptions about those people in premium spaces ran deep unconscious biases forged from years of subtle conditioning. "Sir, everyone gets hungry. Meal service is standardized for a reason. If we make exceptions, chaos ensues." Her emphasis on everyone carried a subtext that prickled Elijah's skin, a veiled insinuation that they didn't belong here, demanding what others earned. Jamal's cramps intensified, a sharp wave making him wince audibly. "Please, ma'am," he pleaded to Vanessa directly, his 10-year-old politeness unwavering. "My stomach feels like it's twisting. I have to eat small bits or I get really sick." He explained his condition in simple terms, words rehearsed from countless doctor visits. "The muscle in my tummy is too thick, so food doesn't go through right." Vanessa's response was ice cold. "Young man, back to your seat. We don't reward disruptions." She turned away, but not before muttering under her breath, loud enough for Elijah to hear, "Parents these days. Coaching kids to fake it for free food." The accusation landed like a slap. Elijah's blood boiled, but he held back, his billionaire poise a shield. Accuse him, fine, but his son a child who'd fought for life since birth. "Unforgivable. That's out of line," he said evenly. "He's not faking, read the bracelet, it's all there." Vanessa waved it off. "I've seen bracelets before, doesn't change policy." The cabin watched in hushed discomfort. A businessman in seat 2A shifted uneasily, phone in hand. Across the aisle, the pediatric nurse from earlier. Elena Morales, her badge red, leaned forward. "Excuse me," she interjected, her voice professional and calm. "I'm a doctor. If the child has pyloric stenosis, delaying feeds is dangerous. I can assess him if needed." She rose slightly, offering help, her expertise a potential lifeline. Vanessa whirled, blocking the L with her cart. "Ma'am, sit down. Unauthorized medical intervention violates FAA regs." "We'll handle it." Her tone brooked no argument, but Elena persisted. This isn't intervention, it's common sense. He's showing signs of distress. Vanessa's face hardened. Back to your seat, or I'll involve the captain. Defeated but fuming, Elena sat, whispering to her companion, this is negligence. Jamal's condition worsened with each passing minute. 30 more ticked by, the plane hitting mild turbulence that amplified his nausea. He stood unsteadily, legs wobbling as he approached the galley, desperation overriding shyness. There, in the narrow aisle, the 10-year-old dropped to his knees before Vanessa, tears welling in his dark eyes. Please, ma'am, just one cracker. I promise I'll be good. I don't want to throw up on the plane. It hurts so bad. His words, etched in vulnerability, pierced the cabin like a cry for mercy. Passengers gasped. The businessmen started filming discreetly. Vanessa loomed over him, her expression a mix of annoyance and disdain. Get up, child. You're causing a scene and embarrassing your family. She turned her back, resuming cart prep as if he were invisible. Jamal remained kneeling a moment longer, shoulders slumping in defeat before crawling back to his seat, tears streaming silently. Elijah's world narrowed to rage and resolve. He pulled Jamal into his lap, stroking his back. You're brave, son. So brave, but the damage unfolded. Jamal doubled over, dry heaves racking his small frame as acid surged. It won't stop, Dad, he gasped. Elijah's inner turmoil peaked flashes of an I see you helplessness, the vow to protect his miracles at all costs. This wasn't fate, this was cruelty, preventable and pointed. Vomiting followed, while staining the tray table. Passengers murmured in alarm. Elena tried again to approach but was rebuffed by Vanessa's glare. Policy, she snapped. Elijah made his first move, a discreet call to his assistant via satellite phone. Jennifer, pull the horizon docks. An alert security at lax, his voice was steel, the billionaire awakening. The crisis escalategimal went limp, dehydration setting in, his bracelet dangling like a silent accusation. Malik and Tariq huddled close, tears in their eyes. Make them help, Dad, Malik begged. Elijah nodded, his plan forming, documentation, witnesses, justice, but first, his son. As the plane droned on, the father's love collided with unchecked bias, setting the stage for a reckoning that would shake the skies. As the bile from Jamal's violent retching stained the tray table and the acrid scent filled the confined air of the first-class cabin, a hush fell over Horizon Airways' flight 447 like a blanket of collective shock. Elijah Thompson's hands trembled not from fear, but from a fury so profound it threatened to shatter his carefully constructed facade of calm. His 10-year-old miracle, the boy who'd defied death twice in infancy, now lay limp against him, skin clammy and breath shallow from dehydration. Malik and Tariq pressed close, their identical faces etched with terror, small hands clutching Jamal's arms as if willing him strength. Dad, he's really sick, Tariq whispered, tears streaking his cheeks. Why won't they help? Malik, the leader, glared toward the galley. Make them, Dad. Please. Elijah's mind raced like one of his algorithms processing a crisis. Assess, document, act. He wasn't just a father in this moment, he was the CEO who'd built Thompson Innovations from grief-fueled code, the man who'd acquired 65% of this very airline 4 months ago. But power meant nothing if it couldn't protect his sons. Hold and steady, boys, he instructed softly, wiping Jamal's forehead with a napkin. We're getting through this. With one arm cradling his son, Elijah pulled out his phone, activating the satellite mode for mid-flight calls. First, he began noting timestamps and a voice memo of every refusal, every symptom, every witness. Time, 2 hours 45 minutes post-takeoff. Child in distress, attendants refusing medical accommodation despite documentation. His first call was to Jennifer Martinez, his executive assistant back in Chicago, a trusted ally who'd been with him since the early days. The line connected with a faint crackle, the plane's altitude no match for his tech. Jennifer, it's Elijah. Emergency on flight 447. His voice was controlled fury, each word a blade. Jamal's incrisispoloric episode escalated. Crews ignored requests. Pull the Horizon acquisition files, every contract clause on passenger safety and medical protocols, and notify LAX ground team medical standby upon landing. Jennifer's response was immediate, her efficiency a bomb. On it, sir, files incoming. Should I loop in legal? Elijah paused, glancing at Vanessa in the galley, her back turned as if the chaos didn't exist. Yes, and security. This ends today. As he hung up, Jamal heaved again, his body convulsing weakly. Elijah's second call ripped at his hearth. One to Risha. Back in the Lake Michigan home, she answered on the first ring, her voice bright with anticipation. Elijah, how's the flight? The boy's excited. But as he explained haltingly, voice cracking for the first time, the line went silent, then erupted in sobs. They're denying him food, our baby, after everything he's been through. Aisha's fierce maternal love surged through the speaker, loud enough for the boys to hear. Elijah, protect them, do whatever it takes. Those miracles are our world, 8 years of hell to hold them, and now this. She paused, composing herself, call the doctor. And promise me, make them pay. Elijah swallowed hard, the weight of their shared history crashing down. The miscarriages, the empty nursery, the nights they'd clung to each other in despair. I promise, love. They're safe with me. The third call was to Dr. Carla Ruiz, the pediatric gastroenterologist who'd saved Jamal's life at 6 weeks old and monitored him ever since. Dr. Ruiz, it's Elijah Thompson, mid-flight emergency. He detailed the timeline. Refusals, symptoms, the vomiting now turning to dry heaves as dehydration deepened. He's approaching metabolic acidosis, electrolytes imbalanced. I need you to explain this to the crew. Dr. Ruiz's voice was urgent, professional alarm cutting through. Put them on now. Children with pyloric stenosis can't go this long. It's child endangerment. Elijah stood, phone in hand, approaching Vanessa with Jamal supported between Malik and Tariq. My son's doctor wants to speak with you. This is a medical directive. Vanessa turned, her face a mask of skepticism. Sir, we're trained for this. No need for outside interference. Elijah thrust the phone forward. She's his specialist, listen, but Vanessa stepped back, arms folded. I'm not taking calls from strangers. This smells like manipulation, faking a crisis for upgrades or whatever. Sit down before I involve security. The refusal sealed something in Elijah. Her prejudice laid bare, accusing a family scarred by real trauma of deceit. You're endangering a child, he said, his tone lethal calm. This is on record. As he returned to his seat, another wave hit. Mabel Johnson, the elderly black woman in seat 1 car, retired nurse with a lifetime of stories etched in her kind ice rose with purpose. She'd been watching, her own memories of discrimination stirring. I've seen enough, she murmured, rummaging in her purse for a pack of crackers. Here, child, she said, extending them to Jamal. This'll help tide you over. Her voice carried the warmth of a grandmother, a beacon in the storm. Vanessa intercepted like a sentinel. Ma'am, you can't distribute food for regulations. Return to your seat. Mabel's eyes flashed. Regulations? This boy's suffering. I've raised 5 kids. I know a medical need when I see one. The confrontation drew eyes. The businessman in 2A, already filming subtly, captured it all. This is going viral, he whispered to a seatmate, uploading snippets to social media via the plane's Wi-Fi. Hashtags like #AirLineglect and Savathaboy began trending in real time, passengers' phones buzzing with notifications as the video spread. Grainy footage of Jamal's plea, Vanessa's dismissal, Elijah's pleas. Online outrage built. Is this racism? One tweet read. Billionaire or not, no one deserves this. Elijah noticed the glow of screens, a digital wave amplifying his fight. He made a 4th calto his head of legal, Marcus Hale. Marcus, prep lawsuits, discrimination, medical neglect, endangerment. Target the crew personally if needed. Holly's response was swift, evidence. Elijah glanced at the businessman, who nodded subtly, sharing his video link via airdrop. Incoming. And Luke PR, this hits the news before we land. Jamal's condition teetered. He sipped water weakly, color draining further. Elijah administered anti-nausea meds from the kit, but it was a stopgap. Hang on, buddy, he whispered, stroking his hair. Dad's fixing this. The boys rallied. Malik fetched a blanket. Tariq hummed a lullaby their mother sang on bad nights. But the cabin's tension piqued Elena Morales, the nurse, demanded action again. Captain must know. Vanessa blocked her. Handled. Elijah's fifth outreach was internal. A discreet email to Horizon's board attaching his notes. As majority owner, I'm witnessing violations. Expect changes. The power shift loomed, but for now, it was survival. As the plane droned toward Lax, Elijah's calls wove a net of accountability, the viral video igniting public fury. What started as a father's quiet resolve had become a mid-air revolution, one that would land with earth-shaking force. The first-class cabin of Horizon Airways Flight 447 was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of unspoken outrage and the faint echo of Jamal's labored breaths. Elijah Thompson cradled his son, whose small frame trembled from the aftershocks of vomiting, his skin a ghostly shade that clawed at Elijah's heart. Malik and Tariq flanked their brother, their faces a mix of fear and defiance, their red polo shirts clinging to their bodies as if mirroring the tension. The viral video, now racing across social media, had turned the cabin into a stage. Passengers' phones glowed with notifications. Whispers of child endangerment and discrimination rippling through the rows. Elijah's calls had set wheels in motion, but the battle was far from over. At 30,000 feet, with 3 hours left to Lax, the real confrontation was about to ignite. Captain Sofia Vargas, a 15-year veteran with a steady hand and a reputation for calm under pressure, emerged from the cockpit after a hushed report from Lisa Nguyen. Her uniform was crisp, her dark hair tucked beneath her cap, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of alarm as she surveyed the scene, a sick child, a furious father, and a crew teetering on the edge of chaos. She approached Rawan, her steps deliberate, and knelt beside Jamal, whose medical bracelet glinted under the cabin lights. Mr. Thompson, I'm Captain Vargas. What's happening here? Her voice was professional, but the urgency was unmistakable. Elijah met her gaze, his composure a thin veneer over a volcano of rage. My son has pyloric stenosis, a documented condition. Your crew's been denying his medically necessary meals for nearly 3 hours. He's in distress, vomiting bile, risking dehydration. I've shown documentation, called his doctor. Our lead attendant, Vanessa, refused to even speak to her. He held up his phone, the screen still displaying Dr. Ruse's contact, the call log a damning record. Vargas turned to Vanessa, who stood rigid by the galley, her earlier bravado faltering under the captain's scrutiny. Is this true? Vanessa crossed her arms, defensive. Captain, I followed protocol. Meal service is scheduled. We can't bend for every claim. He's fine, just hungry like everyone else. Her words dripped with dismissal, but the light cracked as Jamal let out a weak groan, clutching his stomach. Enough, Vargas snapped, her voice cutting through the cabin like a blade. Get crackers and juice to this child now. This is a medical emergency, not a debate. Vanessa hesitated, her face flushing with defiance, but the captain's glare brooked no argument. Move or you're off this plane in cuffs when we land. Lisa scrambled to comply, fetching a sleeve of crackers and a small cup of apple juice from the galley. She handed them to Elijah with trembling hands, whispering, I'm so sorry, before retreating under Vanessa's scowl. Jamal nibbled slowly, his color inching back as the food eased his cramping stomach. Elijah guided his son's hand, his touch gentle but his eyes blazing. You're okay, buddy. We've got you. Malik and Tariq hovered protectively, their bond a silent fortress. We told you Dad would fix it, Malik said fiercely, though his voice wavered. Tariq rubbed Jamal's back, humming softly, a ritual born from countless nights of comforting their brother through pain. Vargas pulled Elijah aside, her expression grave as she glanced at the passenger manifest on her tablet. Her breath caught as she read the name: Elijah Thompson, majority shareholder, Thompson Innovations. The man who'd quietly acquired 65% of Horizon Airways for months ago. Her heart sank. She'd been in the cockpit, unaware of the storm brewing under her command. Mr. Thompson, she began, voice low to avoid passenger ears, I believe there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I've just reviewed the manifest and realized. Elijah raised a hand, stopping her cold. His voice was a controlled inferno, each word deliberate. No misunderstanding, Captain. For 3 hours, I've watched your crew treat my black sons like they don't belong in first class. I've seen them dismiss a child's medical crisis, accuse him of lying, and ignore documented needs. I've recorded every momentary word. He gestured to the businessman into A, still filming discreetly, and to Mabel Johnson, the retired nurse, whose tearful gaze bore witness. This isn't about a mix-up, it's about prejudice and neglect, and it stops now. The cabin fell silent, passengers leaning forward, sensing history unfolding. Vargas swallowed hard, her training kicking in. I take responsibility for my crew's failure. Let me make this right. Elijah shook his head. It's too late for that. But you can start by ensuring no child ever endures this again. He stood, his 6 feet to frame imposing in the tight space, and turned to Vanessa, who shrank behind her cart, her face pale with dawning fear. Vanessa, Elijah said, his voice carrying the weight of a verdict, would you like to know who I am? The question hung like a guillotine. He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a leather portfolio embossed with Thompson Innovations logo. I'm Elijah Thompson, CEO and founder. For months ago, I acquired Horizon Airways. That makes me your boss. And for 3 hours, I've watched you torment my miracle children, my wife, and I waited 8 years to hold children who fought battles you can't imagine. He opened the portfolio, revealing board meeting notes, his name at the top. These boys aren't just passengers, they're my sons. And Jamal, the one you told to stop faking. He nearly died twice before his first birthday. Passengers gasped. Lisa dropped a tray of napkins, the clatter echoing. Vanessa's legs buckled, and she gripped a seat back for support. Elijah continued, his voice raw with emotion. Jamal has pyloric stenosis. He's had surgeries, hospital stays, a life of careful planning to keep him alive. You saw his bracelet, heard his pleas, and called him a liar. You made a 10-year-old beg on his knees for a cracker to prevent a medical emergency. He knelt beside Jamal, lifting his son's wrist to show the bracelet. Jamal Thompson, pyloric stenosis. Frequent feeding required. The engraving was a silent indictment, visible to all. Vanessa stammered, too was following rules, but Elijah cut her off. Rules: you ignored medical documentation, dismissed a doctor's call, and humiliated a sick child. That's not police, that's prejudice. You saw a black family in first class and decided we didn't belong. The cabin vibrated with agreement. Mabel nodded fiercely, the businessman's camera still rolling, now live streaming 2000s. Online, just as Forgemal trended, tweets pouring in, this is why representation matters. Horizon Airways must answer for this. Elijah turned to Lisa, her face streaked with tears. Lisa, you're complicit. You saw a child suffering and stayed silent because of her. He pointed to Vanessa. Fear doesn't excuse neglect. To Vargas, he softened slightly. Captain, you acted when it mattered, but your crew failed under your watch. You'll face retraining to ensure this never happens again. He paused, letting his words sink in, then delivered the final blow. Vanessa, when we land, security will escort you off. Your employment with Horizon Airways is terminated. Lisa, you're suspended pending investigation. Vargas nodded solemnly, accepting her role in the fallout. Vanessa's face crumpled, tears falling as her career unraveled. Passengers erupted, some in applause, others in stunned whispers. Malik and Tariq looked at their father with awe, realizing the power he wielded not just for them, but for justice. As Elijah sat, pulling Jamal close, the boy whispered, "Thanks, Dad, you made it okay." Elijah kissed his forehead, his heart heavy but resolute. The video, now viral with millions of views, had turned their pain into a public cry, but Elijah's fight was personal. He'd built an empire to escape grief. Now, he'd use it to dismantle the prejudice that dared touch his sons. As the plane cruised toward Lax, the cabin buzzed with the promise of reckoning a father's love about to reshape an industry. The descent of Horizon Airways' Flight 447 toward Los Angeles was not just a matter of altitude, it was a plunge into reckoning. The cabin electric with the aftermath of Elijah Thompson's devastating revelation. The first-class passengers sat in rapt silence, their eyes darting between the family in row one and the defeated figure of Vanessa Carter, who slumped against the galley wall. Her once authoritative presence reduced to a tear-streaked shadow. Lisa Nguyen stood frozen, her hands clasped tightly, as if to anchor herself against the collapse of her career. Captain Sofia Vargas had retreated to the cockpit, her shoulders stiff with the weight of her crew's failures. But at the heart of the storm was Elijah, his sixth woe frame a pillar of resolve as he tended to his son Malik, Tariq. And Jamal's red polo shirts and dark jeans now seemed like badges of resilience in a battle they hadn't chosen. Jamal, still pale but steadier after his crackers and juice, leaned against Elijah, his small body exhausted but safe. "Dad, are we in trouble?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Elijah's heart twisted, the innocence in that question cut deeper than Vanessa's cruelty. He knelt to his son's level, a ritual born from those fragile NICU days, and looked into 3 pairs of identical dark eyes. "No, buddy, you did nothing wrong. You were braver than most grown-ups." He glanced at Malik and Tariq, who nodded solemnly, their bond with Jamal unspoken but ironclad. "You all were. And I'm proud of you." The plane tilted gently, the seatbelt sign chiming as the descent began. Outside, the California coastline glimmered under the late afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the turmoil within. Elijah's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and sorrow. The viral video, now amassing millions of views under Justice for Jamal, had turned their ordeal into a global spectacle, tweets and comments flooding in. From this is why we need systemic change to Horizon Airways. Do better. The businessman into A, whose footage had sparked the firestorm, caught Elijah's eye and gave a subtle nod, airdropping a final clip of Vanessa's dismissal. Elijah's phone buzzed with notifications, his legal team confirming lawsuits, his PR team drafting statements, and Aisha, back in Chicago, texting a single line, "You kept your promise. Bring our babies home." As the landing gear extended with a thud, Elijah's thoughts drifted to a moment 8 years prior, one he hadn't shared with anyone but Aisha. It was the night after Jamal's second brush with death, when dehydration had nearly stolen him. Elijah had sat alone in the hospital chapel, not praying but bargaining, his voice raw with desperation. "Give him a chance and I'll make the world better for him, for all of them." That vow had driven his empire, his acquisitions, his philanthropy. Now, at 30,000 feet, it fueled his resolve to turn this pain into purpose. The wheels kissed the tarmac at Lax, the plane jolting to a stop. Outside, a scene awaited that Elijah had orchestrated with surgical precision: security officers in crisp uniforms, medical personnel with a stretcher, and a cluster of news crews. Their cameras trained on the gate, the viral video had drawn them like moths to a flame, reporters clamoring for the story of the billionaire father and the airline that failed his sons. Elijah gathered the boys' backpacks, his movements deliberate. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice a steady anchor. Malik adjusted his posture, mimicking his father's strength. Tariq held Jamal's hand, guiding him gently. As the cabin door opened, the atmosphere shifted. Passengers remained seated, as if sensing the gravity of what was to come. Vanessa emerged first, escorted by 2 security officers who met her at the galley. Her face was ashen, tears streaming as she realized the full weight of her termination. "This wasn't personal," she stammered, but the officers' expressions were stone. Lisa followed, her suspension paperwork already in hand, her eyes downcast with shame. Captain Vargas lingered at the cockpit door, her face a mask of professional restraint, knowing her retraining loomed. Elijah led his sons down the aisle, their steps measured but proud. Jamal, still weak, clung to his father's hand, his medical bracelet catching the light. As they passed Vanessa, now flanked by security, Malik whispered, "She shouldn't have been mean to you, Jamal." Tariq nodded, adding, "But Dad fixed it." The words, simple yet profound, struck Elijah like a chord. This wasn't just about justice. It was about teaching his sons their worth in a world that might try to diminish it. The jetway was a gauntlet of flashing cameras and shouted questions. "Mr. Thompson, will you sue Horizon Airways? Is this about race?" Elijah shielded the boys, his face impassive but his eyes fierce. A reporter from a major network thrust a microphone forward. "Your story is gone viral. What's next?" Elijah paused, choosing his words carefully. What's next is accountability. No child should beg for care. No family should face prejudice in a place they paid to be safe. The cameras whirred, capturing every word as the boys stood tall, their red shirts a vivid contrast against the gray jetway. Medical staff met them at the gate, a paramedic kneeling to check Jamal's vitals. "Pulse is stable, but we'll hydrate him and monitor," she said, her tone kind. Elijah nodded, grateful for competence after hours of neglect. As the paramedics guided Jamal to a waiting stretcher, Mabel Johnson approached, her eyes glistening. "Mr. Thompson, I've seen a lot in my 70 years, but your strength for those boys is something special. You've got a friend in me." She pressed a small card into his hand, her contact details, a promise of support. Elijah thanked her, the gesture a flicker of humanity in the chaos. The news crews followed as they moved through the terminal, Elijah's team already coordinating a press conference for later that day. His phone buzzed again, Jennifer confirming that the lawsuits were filed, targeting Vanessa personally for discrimination and endangerment, and Horizon for systemic failures. The board was in emergency session, rattled by their owner's wrath, but Elijah's focus was on his sons. As they reached the airport lounge, he knelt once more, his voice soft but firm. "Boys, what happened today was wrong. Adults are supposed to protect you, not hurt you. But you were polite, brave, and strong, especially you, Jamal." He touched his son's cheek. "Some people will judge you for how you look or where you sit. But you belong everywhere your heart takes you. And I'll always fight to make sure you know that." Malik's eyes burned with a new understanding. "You showed them, Dad. They can't mess with us." Tariq, ever the peacemaker, added, "I just want Jamal to be okay." Jamal, sipping water from a paramedic's bottle, managed a smile. "I'm okay now. But I still want to be a pilot and make sure everyone gets snacks." The innocence of his dream, unbroken by cruelty, brought tears to Elijah's eyes. As they boarded a private car to their hotel, the LAX terminal buzzing with the fallout of their story, Elijah looked out at the fading sunset. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a crusade. The world was watching, and he'd ensure that Horizon Airways and every airline learned what happened when you crossed a father's love with a billionaire's power. The boys leaned against him, exhausted but safe, their trust in him unshaken. And in that moment, Elijah knew this fight would change more than one flight. It would reshape the skies for every child who came after. The sun dipped low over Los Angeles as Elijah Thompson and his sons settled into their hotel suite, the sprawling cityscape a glittering contrast to the ordeal they'd just endured. The news of Flight 447's scandal was already a wildfire, blazing across screens and social media with hashtags like Justice for Jamal and Horizon Airways fail trending worldwide. Elijah sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his phone buzzing incessantly, texts from Aisha, updates from his legal team, and a flood of interview requests from outlets like CNN and the New York Times. But his focus was on his boys, sprawled on the suite's plush couches, their red polo shirts rumpled but their spirits intact. Jamal, now hydrated and stabilized after the paramedics' care at lax, nibbled on a cracker, his color returning. Malik and Tariq flanked him, sharing a tablet to watch airplane videos, their laughter a fragile but defiant melody in the wake of trauma. Elijah's heart swelled with pride, but beneath it simmered a resolve forged in fury. The events on that plane weren't just a personal affront. They were a symptom of a deeper-wrought systemic bias and neglect that he, as Horizon Airways' majority owner, had the power to uproot. He'd already fired Vanessa Carter and suspended Lisa Nguyen, but this was bigger than two employees. It was about ensuring no child, no family, would ever face what has had. As the boys drifted into a light nap, exhausted from the day, Elijah opened his laptop, drafting a memo to Horizon's board. Sweeping changes were coming, and they'd start tonight. In the weeks that followed, Elijah's wrath translated into action with the precision of a man who'd built a $2.5 billion empire from code and grit. First, he ordered a complete overhaul of Horizon Airways policies. New training modules were mandated for every employee, from gate agents to pilots, focusing on anti-discrimination, cultural sensitivity, and medical accommodations. No one boards a Horizon flight without knowing how to read a medical bracelet, he told his HR director in a late-night call. And no one dismisses a passenger's needs because of what they assume about their skin or status. The training wasn't optional. It was tied to employment, with regular audits to ensure compliance. He brought in diversity experts and medical professionals, including Dr. Carla Ruiz, to design protocols that prioritized passenger safety over bureaucracy. But Elijah's vision extended beyond policy tweaks. He established the Miracle Kids Foundation, a nonprofit seeded with $50 million of his own fortune, dedicated to supporting families battling infertility and children with medical conditions facing discrimination. The foundation's mission was personal. It would fund research for conditions like pyloric stenosis, provide grants for fertility treatments, and advocate for kids like Jamal who needed the world to see their worth. At its launch event, held in a sleek LA conference center, Elijah stood before a crowd of donors and reporters, his sons at his side. "My wife and I waited 8 years for these boys," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "They're miracles not just to us, but to a world that needs to learn from them. This foundation is their legacy and a promise that no child will beg for care again." Jamal, now a confident 10-year-old advocate, became the foundation's young face. At the event, he spoke briefly, his words simple but piercing. "I got really sick on a plane because people didn't listen. I want to help other kids so they don't have to feel scared like I did." His speech, shared widely online, sparked a surge in donations, $10 million in the first week alone. Medical organizations reached out, offering to partner on pyloric stenosis awareness campaigns, and Jamal's story inspired parents to share their own tales of navigating healthcare biases. His dream of becoming a pilot, once a private whisper, now echoed in interviews, a symbol of resilience that captivated millions. Meanwhile, the legal fallout from Flight 447 was seismic. Elijah's team filed federal discrimination complaints with the Department of Transportation, targeting Horizon's systemic failures and Vanessa Carter personally for child endangerment. In a dramatic courtroom scene in downtown LA, Vanessa faced the consequences of her actions. The hearing, packed with reporters and live-streamed to a global audience, was a spectacle of accountability. Vanessa, dressed in a muted gray suit, took the stand, her voice trembling as she tried to defend herself. "I was following protocol," she insisted, but the evidence, passenger videos, Elijah's recordings, and Dr. Ruiz's testimony painted a damning picture. The judge, a stern woman with decades on the bench, leaned forward. "You dismissed a child's documented medical crisis and accused his family of deceit. That's not protocol, that's prejudice." The room buzzed as Vanessa broke down, her apology drowned by the weight of her actions. She was ordered to pay a hefty fine and attend mandatory counseling, her aviation career effectively over. But the courtroom wasn't the end of Vanessa's story, it was a turning point. Elijah, in a move that stunned observers, channeled his pain into something unexpected. He funded a community center in South LA, named the Carter Redemption Center, not to honor Vanessa's cruelty but to symbolize the possibility of change. The center, built in the neighborhood where Vanessa had grown up, offered aviation workshops for underprivileged youth, teaching them about flight safety and career paths. Vanessa, after months of court-ordered therapy to confront her biases, volunteered there, a humbled figure sharing her story as a cautionary tale. "I failed a little boy," she told a group of teens, her voice raw. "I let my assumptions blind me. Don't make my mistakes." The center became a beacon, its opening attended by community leaders and, surprisingly, Elijah himself, who saw redemption as a stronger legacy than revenge. Back at Horizon, the changes rippled outward. The airline's hiring practices were revamped to prioritize diversity and empathy, with psychometric tests to screen for bias. Customer service protocols now required immediate escalation of medical requests to senior staff. And every flight carried a Miracle Kids kit, pre-packed snacks and medical supplies for passengers with documented needs. Elijah personally oversaw the rollout, flying incognito on test flights to ensure compliance. The industry took notice. Rival airlines began adopting similar measures, fearing lawsuits and public backlash. Aviation magazines ran headlines, "Thompson's Crusade. How one flight changed flying forever." The boys, meanwhile, were healing. At home in Chicago, Aisha enveloped them in hugs that seemed to last forever, her tears mingling with pride as they recounted their bravery. "You stood tall," she told them, her voice fierce with love. "You showed the world who you are." Malik began sketching business plans for a kind airline in his notebook. Tariq wrote poems about unity, and Jamal, ever the dreamer, drew planes with snacks for all painted on the wings. Their experience had left scars, but also a fiery belief that their story could change things. Elijah, too, found a new purpose. Late one night, as Aisha slept beside him, he sat in his study, drafting a letter to the Miracle Kids Foundation board. "This isn't about me," he wrote. "It's about every family who feels unseen, every child who's told they don't belong. We'll fight until the skies are safe for all." The letter, leaked to the press, became a manifesto inspiring activists and parents alike. As the weeks turned 2 months, Flight 447's legacy grew, not just a scandal but a movement, sparked by a father's love and a boy's courage at 30,000 feet. The aftermath of Flight 447 rippled far beyond the tarmac of LAX, its echoes reshaping lives and institutions with the relentless force of a tide. In the weeks following the incident, Elijah Thompson's crusade for justice had transformed from a personal battle into a public reckoning. With Horizon Airways and the broader aviation industry under scrutiny, but for Elijah, Aisha, and their 3 sons Malik, Tariq, and Jamal's story was still deeply personal, a wound that was healing but not yet closed. The Chicago skyline gleamed outside their Lake Michigan penthouse, a reminder of the empire Elijah had built, but tonight it was the quiet moments that mattered. Malik sketching futuristic planes, Tariq reading to Jamal, and Aisha's gentle hand on Elijah's shoulder as they planned their next steps. The Miracle Kids Foundation was thriving, policy changes were rolling out at Horizon, but the human cost of that flight demanded more than institutional fixes. It demanded redemption, accountability, and in some cases, forgiveness. Vanessa Carter's world had crumbled in the wake of her termination. Once a senior flight attendant with 15 years of impeccable service, she now faced federal charges for discrimination and child endangerment. Her name synonymous with the viral video that exposed her cruelty to Jamal. The courtroom had been merciless, but the real trial was internal. Court-ordered counseling forced her to confront the biases she'd carried like invisible baggage, assumptions rooted in her small-town upbringing, where first-class cabins were for a certain type of passenger, and black families like the Thompsons didn't fit the mold. In a stark therapy room in South LA, Vanessa sat across from a counselor, her voice breaking as she recounted the moment she'd dismissed Jamal's pleas. "I didn't see a sick child," she admitted, tears staining her blouse. "I saw a challenge to my authority, a family I assumed was out of place. I was wrong, horribly wrong." Her transformation began slowly, like a seed breaking through concrete. The counselor, a black woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, pushed her to unpack decades of prejudice. From casual stereotypes to the resentment she'd felt toward passengers who didn't belong when Elijah's team announced the Carter Redemption Center in her old neighborhood, a facility funded by the Miracle Kids Foundation to teach aviation skills to underprivileged youth. Vanessa was stunned. The irony wasn't lost on her. A center bearing her name, not as a monument to her failure, but as a challenge to rebuild. She volunteered, initially out of obligation, but soon with purpose. Standing before a group of wide-eyed teens, she shared her story rawly. "I hurt a little boy because I let my biases blind me. Learn from messy people for who they are, not what you assume." The kids listened, some skeptical, others moved, as Vanessa poured her regret into teaching them about flight safety and dreams that could soar. Lisa Nguyen, the junior attendant, faced her own reckoning. Her suspension from Horizon had been a wake-up call, her silence during Jamal's crisis a stain she couldn't erase. In a small apartment in LA, she spent sleepless nights replaying the flighter failure to challenge Vanessa, her fear of rocking the boat. Determined to atone, she enrolled in bystander intervention training, learning to speak up against injustice. When Horizon offered her a chance to return, she declined, choosing instead to become a trainer herself. At aviation conferences, Lisa stood before rooms of flight attendants, her voice steady but haunted. "I watched a child suffer because I was afraid to contradict my boss," she told them. Silence is complicity. If you see a passenger in distress, especially a chilled act, even if it means risking your job, her sessions, raw with vulnerability, became must-attend events, reshaping how crews approached passenger care. Captain Sofia Vargas, spared termination but humbled, rose to the challenge. Promoted to Horizon's Director of Safety and Inclusion, she overhauled training programs, embedding Flight for 47's lessons into every module. At a training center in Dallas, she stood before new hires, showing them Jamal's viral video not to shame, but to teach. "This is what failure looks like," she said, her voice firm. "We failed a child because we didn't listen. Your job isn't just service, it's humanity." Her program, mandatory across Horizon's 10,000 employees, included simulations of medical emergencies and bias de-escalation, earning praise from industry regulators. Vargas, once a bystander in her own cockpit, became a leader who ensured no crew would repeat her mistakes. But the most poignant moment came months later at the grand opening of the Carter Redemption Center. The South LA community buzzed with excitement, the sleek building a beacon of hope in a neighborhood starved for opportunity. Elijah arrived with Aisha and the boys, their presence drawing gasps from the crowd, local kids, parents, and reporters who'd followed their saga. Jamal, now stronger and more confident, wore his medical bracelet proudly, his pilot dreams unshaken. Malik and Tariq stood close, their bond a shield against the memories of that flight. As they toured the center with its flight simulators and classrooms, Elijah spoke briefly to the press. "This isn't about me or my family," he said. "It's about kids who deserve to dream without fear, who deserve to be seen." Inside, the boys spotted Vanessa in a corner reading to a group of children about airplane mechanics. Her face froze as she saw them, recognition sparking a flood of shame and hope. The crowd hushed, sensing the weight of the moment. Jamal, guided by an instinct beyond his 10 years, broke away from his brothers and approached her. Aisha tensed, but Elijah squeezed her hand, trusting their son's heart. "Miss Vanessa," Jamal said quietly, his voice clear in the silent room, "Dad says you help kids here now. That's good. I'm glad you're being kind." He paused, then extended his small hand, a gesture so pure it broke the room's collective breath. "I forgive you. Vanessa's knees buckled, and she took his hand in both of hers, tears streaming. "I'm so sorry, Jamal," she whispered. "You needed help, and I failed you. I'll spend my life making sure no one else does." The children watching clapped, not fully understanding but feeling the moment's power. Aisha wiped her eyes, pride and pain mingling, while Elijah nodded, his vision of redemption realized not for Vanessa's sake, but for the kids she'd now serve. The center's opening wasn't just a ceremony, it was a spark. Local teens enrolled in droves, inspired by Jamal's story and Vanessa's candor. One girl, a 15-year-old named Maya, approached Elijah after the event. "I want to be a pilot like your son," she said, clutching a flyer for the center's scholarship program. "He's brave. And you're making it so I can try." Elijah smiled, handing her his card. "You'll get there. And Jamal will be cheering you on." That night, back in their hotel, the Thompsons held a small celebration. Aisha organized a family council, a tradition from their infertility years where they shared hopes and fears. Malik spoke first. "I want to make businesses that help people like you, Dad." Tariq, ever gentle, added, "I want everyone to feel safe, like we do now." Jamal, sketching a plane on a napkin, grinned. "I'm gonna fly, and I'll make sure every kid gets snacks no matter what." Laughter filled the room, but Elijah's thoughts drifted to a dream he'd had the night before. Jamal, grown, in a pilot's uniform, soaring over a world where no child begged for care. The dream felt like a promise, one he'd fight to make real. The Carter Redemption Center became a model, replicated in 5 cities within a year. Vanessa's story, once a cautionary tale, evolved into one of growth, taught in diversity workshops nationwide. Lisa's training sessions spread to international airlines, and Vargas's reforms set a new industry standard. For the Thompsons, the center was a symbol not of victory over Vanessa, but of turning pain into purpose, a legacy born from a father's love and a boy's forgiveness. The marble halls of the U.S. Capitol gleamed with the weight of history, their polished surfaces reflecting the soft glow of chandeliers as Elijah Thompson and his son Jamal stepped through the doors of a congressional hearing room. 6 months had passed since the harrowing events of Horizon Airways' Flight 447, but the echoes of that day reverberated far beyond the skies, shaping a movement that had landed them here, before the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. Elijah, at 44, stood tall in a Navy suit, his presence commanding yet grounded, a billionaire whose wealth paled beside his purpose. Beside him, Jamal, now poised 10-year-old, adjusted his red tee a nod to the polo shirt he'd worn on that fateful fly, this medical bracelet catching the light as he clutched a small notebook filled with his pilot dreams. The room buzzed with anticipation. Senators, aides, reporters, and a live-stream audience of millions waited to hear from the father and son whose story had ignited a global call for change. The hearing was no ordinary proceeding, titled Passenger Protections in the Skies, addressing discrimination and medical neglect. It was the culmination of Elijah's relentless advocacy. The viral video of Jamal's ordeal, now viewed over 50 million times, had forced the aviation industry to its knees, prompting investigations, lawsuits, and policy overhauls. But Elijah wasn't content with corporate apologies or internal reforms. He wanted systemic change legislation to ensure no child, no family would face the prejudice and neglect his had endured. The Thompson Act, as it was already being called, would mandate anti-discrimination training for all airline staff, immediate escalation of medical needs, and hefty penalties for violations. Today, Elijah and Jamal were here to testify, their voices a bridge between personal pain and public policy. The room fell silent as Senator Clara Evans, a seasoned lawmaker with a reputation for fairness, called the hearing to order. Her gray hair framed a face etched with resolve as she addressed the packed gallery. "We're here to confront a failure not just of one airline, but of an industry that allowed a child to suffer. Mr. Thompson, Master Thompson, thank you for your courage." Elijah nodded, his hand resting lightly on Jamal's shoulder. The boy's eyes, wide but steady, scanned the room, landing on a senator doodling on a notepad, a small, human detail that grounded him. Elijah spoke first, his voice a blend of steel and sorrow. 6 months ago, my son Jamal was denied food on a flight because of his medical condition, pyloric stenosis. He begged on his knees for a cracker to avoid a life-threatening crisis. The crew dismissed us because we didn't fit their image of first-class passengers. I'm a black man, a father, and, yes, Horizon Airways majority owner. But that day, none of that mattered. My son's pain was ignored because of what we looked like. The room hung on his words, cameras capturing every inflection. This isn't just our story. It's the story of every family who's been unseen, unheard, or disrespected. The Thompson Act will hold airlines accountable not with fines, but with a culture that prioritizes humanity. Senators leaned forward, some scribbling notes, others exchanging glances. The gallery murmured, a mix of support and tension. Elijah's testimony wove their 8-year struggle for parenthetic failures, miscarriages, Jamal's near-death battle, Sinto, a call for reform. I built an empire to give my sons a better world, he said, but no amount of money can protect them from prejudice unless we change the systems that enable it. He passed the microphone to Jamal, his trust in his son absolute. Jamal stood, small but unyielding, his voice clear despite a slight tremble. Hi, I'm Jamal Thompson. I'm 10, and I want to be a pilot like Bessie Coleman. A ripple of smiles crossed the room. A senator adjusted her glasses, captivated. On the plane, I was really sick because I couldn't eat. My tummy hurt so bad I thought I was gonna die, like when I was a baby. I asked for help, but they didn't listen. I don't want other kids to feel like that. The Thompson Act means grown-ups have to learn to help everyone, no matter what. He held up his notebook, a drawing of a red plane with snacks for all on the wings. This is my plane. Everyone safe on it. The room erupted in applause, senators included, as Jamal sat. His cheeks flushed but proud. The hearing wasn't without resistance. A senator from a conservative state, skeptical of new regulations, pressed Elijah. Mr. Thompson, isn't this a matter for airlines to handle internally? Why burden the industry with federal mandates? Elijah's response was razor-sharp. Internal fixes failed my son. They failed countless others we'll never hear about because they don't have my resources. This isn't about burden, it's about accountability. The senator nodded, unconvinced but silenced by the room's mood. Unbeknownst to Elijah, a shadow loomed outside the hearing. Victor Crane, a rival tech mogul with a minority stake in Horizon, saw Elijah's crusade as a threat to his influence. Days before, Crane's team had leaked a smear campaign to tabloids, painting Elijah as an opportunistic billionaire exploiting the incident for fame. Anonymous posts on X accused him of staging Jamal's crisis, citing his wealth as proof of manipulation. As Elijah testified, Crane sat in a D.C. office, orchestrating a lobbying push to dilute the Thompson Act, whispering to sympathetic senators about overreach, but the plan backfired. A whistleblower from Crane's team, disgusted by the tactics, leaked emails to a journalist covering the hearing. By midday, the story broke. Rival mogul targets Thompson family to sabotage airline reform. The betrayal galvanized support for Elijah. Trending understand with Jamal as ex-users rallied, protect the Thompsons, not corporate greed. Inside, the hearing shifted as Senator Evans presented the leaked emails, exposing Crane's scheme. The room buzzed with outrage. A senator who'd wavered now pledged support for the act. Elijah, unaware of the drama until a staffer slipped him a note, felt a surge of vindication. They can come for me, he told Aisha later, but they won't stop us. The hearing closed with a unanimous committee vote to advance the Thompson Act to the Senate floor. A rare bipartisan win driven by Jamal's story and the undeniable evidence of systemic failure. As father and son left the Capitol, reporters swarmed, but Elijah shielded Jamal, guiding him to their waiting car. Inside, Jamal clutched his notebook, his voice soft. Dad, did we make things better? Elijah pulled him close, his heart full. You did, son. You showed them what courage looks like. That night, in their DC hotel, Aisha joined them via video call, her pride radiant. You'd changed the world today, she said, tears in her eyes. Malik and Tariq, watching from Chicago, chimed in, Jamal, you're a superhero. The boy grinned, sketching another plane, this one with stars. The Thompson Act's passage wasn't guaranteed, but its momentum was unstoppable. Elijah's testimony, paired with Jamal's raw honesty, had shifted the narrative. Airlines scrambled to preempt regulation, adopting Horizon's reform Miracle Kids kits, bias training, while passengers shared stories of past neglect, amplifying the call for change. Crane's influence waned, his smear campaign a footnote in the Thompsons' triumph. As Elijah tucked Jamal into bed, he whispered, You're my pilot, kid. You're leading us all. The boy drifted off, dreaming of skies where every child was safe, a dream now closer to reality than ever before. 6 months after the storm of Flight 447, the Thompson family stood on the cusp of a new chapter, their scars from that harrowing day transforming into a beacon of hope. The Los Angeles sun blazed outside the windows of their hotel suite, where Elijah, Aisha, and their triplet sons Malik, Tariq, and Jamal prepared for another flight with Horizon Airways. This wasn't just any trip, it was a deliberate return to the skies, a test of the changes Elijah had fought for, and a chance to show his boys that fear would not define their future. The Thompson Act was gaining traction in Congress, the Miracle Kids Foundation was thriving, and the Carter Redemption Center was inspiring communities nationwide. But for Elijah, this moment was about his sons reclaiming their joy, especially Jamal, whose courage had sparked a movement. The suite buzzed with the boys' chatter as they packed their backpacks. Their red polo shirts replaced with navy ones emblazoned with the Miracle Kids Foundation logo, a soaring plane with a heart-shaped contrail. Malik, ever the leader, organized their snacks, ensuring Jamal's medical kit was stocked with crackers and juice. No one's messing with us this time, right, Dad? He asked, his 10-year-old bravado masking a lingering wariness. Tariq, the peacemaker, adjusted Jamal's bracelet, a habit born of love. We're gonna have fun, Jamal. You get the window seat again, Jamal. His pilot dreams brighter than ever, grinned. Holding a sketch of a red plane labeled Hope Flyer, I'm gonna watch the clouds and pretend I'm flying it, he said, his voice steady despite the memory of his ordeal. Elijah and Aisha exchanged a glance, their shared history of 8 years of infertility and Jamal's near-death battles anchoring their resolve. This flight's different, Elijah assured them, his voice a blend of fatherly warmth and billionaire steel. We've changed the rules. He'd personally overseen Horizon's new protocols, mandatory bias training, immediate medical escalations, and Miracle Kids kits on every flight for passengers with documented needs. Captain Sofia Vargas, now Director of Safety, had ensured the crew for Flight 552 to Chicago was handpicked, briefed on the Thompsons' history. Aisha, radiant in a teal dress, hugged each boy tightly. You're our miracles, she said. Show the world what you're made of. At Lax, the terminal was a different beast from 6 months ago. No hostile glances, no whispered judgments. The viral Justice for Jamal campaign had made the Thompsons icons, their faces recognized from newsreels and the congressional hearing. As they approached the gate, a young black gate agent beamed. Mr. Thompson, it's an honor. Your son's story changed how we do things here. She handed them boarding passes, each marked with a special note. VIP medical priority. Jamal's eyes widened. Does that mean I get my snacks? The agent winked. You'll have a whole cart if you want, kiddo. Boarding was seamless, the first-class cabin a haven of comfort. The crew greeted them warmly. Lead attendant Maria Torres, a veteran with a kind smile, personally checked Jamal's kit. We've got your meals prepped, Jamal, she said, kneeling to his level. Crackers, juice, and a little pudding for fun. Just ring if you need more. Elijah nodded, grateful for the shift. The boys settled in, Malik diving into a movie, Tariq sketching clouds, and Jamal pressing his face to the window as the plane taxied. The takeoff was smooth, the engines roar a promise of redemption. "It's like my dream plane," Jamal whispered, his voice full of wonder. "No one's scared here." 2 hours in, Maria delivered Jamal's tray right on schedule, her efficiency a stark contrast to Vanessa's neglect. Passengers nearby smiled, some recognizing the family from the news. A teenage girl across the aisle, wearing a Carter Redemption Center hoodie, leaned over. "You're Jamal, right? I'm training to be a pilot because of you." Jamal blushed, showing her his sketch. "Cool. Maybe we'll fly together someday." The interaction warmed Elijah's heart, a reminder of his son's impact. But the day's significance went beyond the flight. That evening, the Thompsons were set to appear on Skyward Stories, a national TV show celebrating aviation heroes. The producers had reached out after the hearing, captivated by Jamal's testimony and Elijah's reforms. The live taping, set in a sleek LA studio, was a chance to amplify their message. As the plane landed in Chicago, a private car whisked them to the studio where a crowd of fans waited, holding signs, "Fly High, Jamal." And Thompson Act Now, the boys, initially shy, waved back. Their confidence growing. Inside, the studio glowed with warm lights, the set designed like a cockpit with a starry backdrop. Host Lena Harper, a former pilot turned journalist, welcomed them with genuine admiration. "Elijah, Jamal, your story has changed aviation. Tell us what's next." Elijah spoke first, his voice steady. "The Thompson Act is a start, but it's not enough. We're investing in medical tech wearable monitors for kids like Jamal so airlines can't ignore their needs." He'd already pledged $20 million to develop a prototype with Thompson Innovations, a device that could alert crews to vital sign changes in real time. Jamal, seated on a stool beside his father, took the mic, his small voice carrying a giant's strength. "I want to be a pilot, but I also want kids to feel safe when they fly. No one should have to beg like I did." He shared his Hope Flyer drawing, the audience erupting in applause. Lena, visibly moved, turned to the camera. "This is why we tell these stories. Jamal Thompson, you're a hero behind the scenes." Malik and Tariq watched proudly, whispering ideas for their own dreams. Malik's airline business, Tariq's health clinics. The taping ended with a surprise. Lena announced a scholarship in Jamal's name, funded by Horizon and the Miracle Kids Foundation, for young pilots from underserved communities. The crowd roared, and Jamal's eyes sparkled. "That means more kids like me can fly," he said, hugging Elijah. Aisha, in the wings, wiped tears, her pride a silent force. But the true heart of the day came later at a quiet community event in Chicago. The Thompsons visited a youth center inspired by the Carter Redemption Center, where Vanessa Carter herself was volunteering, her transformation ongoing. She approached Jamal hesitantly, her eyes downcast. "Jamal, I'm so sorry for what I did." "You're an incredible kid." Jamal, guided by his gentle heart, hugged her. "It's okay now. You're helping people, that's what matters." The moment, captured by a local reporter, went viral, a testament to forgiveness as powerful as justice. As they drove home, Elijah reflected on the day. The flight had been flawless, the TV appearance a triumph, and Jamal's forgiveness a lesson in grace. He looked at his sons in the backseat, dreaming of skies and futures unbound. This wasn't the end of their fight, but a new beginning, a world where their miracles could soar, and where every child's needs were met with care, not cruelty. The Chicago skyline shimmered under a blanket of stars as the Thompson family gathered in their Lake Michigan penthouse. The city's lights a quiet testament to the empire Elijah had built and the legacy his sons were beginning to shape. It was 5 years after the storm of Horizon Airways' Flight 447, a day that had once threatened to break them but instead forged a movement that rippled across the world. The Thompson Act had passed Congress with overwhelming support, mandating anti-discrimination training and medical accommodations for every U.S. airline, its influence inspiring similar laws in Europe and Asia. The Miracle Kids Foundation had grown into a global force, funding research for conditions like pyloric stenosis and scholarships for countless children. The Carter Redemption Center, now a network of 10 facilities, was training a new generation of aviators from underserved communities. But for Elijah, Aisha, and their triplets Malik, Tariq, and Jamal, now 15 years old, the true measure of their journey was not in headlines or laws, but in the lives they'd touched and the family they'd become. The penthouse was alive with warmth, the walls adorned with photos of their triumphs, Jamal testifying before Congress, Malik speaking at a youth entrepreneurship summit, Tariq volunteering at a pediatric clinic. Tonight was a rare pause, a family dinner to celebrate the boys' sophomore year and the anniversary of the Thompson Act's passage. Aisha, radiant in a sapphire dress, set the table with their favorite dishes: jollof rice, roasted chicken, and a special tray of crackers and juice for Jamal, a nod to the ritual that had saved him. Elijah, his hair now flecked with gray, watched his sons with a pride that felt infinite. They were no longer the small boys in red polos, but young men with dreams as vast as the skies they'd once feared. Malik, lanky and confident, had already launched a startup at 15, a mobile app connecting young entrepreneurs with mentors, its seed funding secured from Elijah's venture capital arm. "Dad, I'm pitching to investors next week," he announced, slicing into his chicken. "I want my app to help kids like Usonis who've got big ideas but no connections." His leadership, honed on that fateful flight when he'd rallied for Jamal, now shone in boardrooms. His eyes carrying the same fire as his father's. Tariq, quieter but no less driven, wore glasses now, his gentle soul channeled into pre-med studies through a high school magnet program. "I'm shadowing at a hospital this summer," he said, passing the rice. "I want to be a doctor, maybe focus on kids with conditions like Jamal's." No one should feel ignored. His empathy, born from years of soothing his brother's pain, had become his calling, his sketches of clouds now replaced with anatomy charts. Jamal, the heart of their story, sat tallest of the three, his frame lean but strong, his medical bracelet still a constant companion. He'd enrolled in a youth aviation program at the Chicago Redemption Center, acing flight simulators and earning his first solo glider certificate, a milestone that made national news. "I'm starting ground school next month," he said, his voice bright with purpose. "I'm gonna fly for real, like Bessie Coleman. And my planes will have snacks for every yawn, no exceptions." His sketchbook, now filled with detailed aircraft designs, lay open beside him. The Hope Flyer, now a sleek jet with a heart-shaped contrail. Aisha laughed, her eyes glistening. "You boys make us so proud. 8 years of waiting, and now look at ya changing the world." She glanced at Elijah, their shared history of failures, hospital vigils, the night she'd nearly left woven into every smile. Elijah raised a glass of sparkling cider. "Two miracles," he said, "and to a world where no one has to beg to be seen." The boys clinked glasses, their laughter filling the room like music. But the evening held a deeper purpose, a reflection on their journey sparked by a surprise invitation. A major documentary series, Skies of Justice, had premiered that week, chronicling Flight 447's impact and featuring the Thompsons as its heart. The producers had sent a private screening link, and after dinner the family gathered on the sectional sofa, the city's glow framing them through the windows. The documentary opened with grainy footage of Jamal's plea on the plane, Vanessa's dismissal, and Elijah's thunderous reveal as Horizon's owner. It wove in their congressional testimony, the Carter Redemption Center's opening, and interviews with passengers like Mabel Johnson, who'd become a family friend. But it was Jamal's voiceover that stole the room. "I was scared that day, but I learned something. If you speak up, even when it's hard, you can make things better. Not just for you, but for everyone." The screen faded to a montage of the Thompson Act's impact, airline crews trained in bias de-escalation, Miracle Kids kits on every major carrier, and children with medical conditions flying without fear. A segment showed Vanessa Carter, now a full-time educator at the Redemption Center, teaching teens about empathy in aviation. "I failed a child," she said on camera, her voice steady but raw. "But his forgiveness taught me to do better. I'm still learning." The boys clapped, Jamal's smile soft but genuine. "She's trying, Dad," he said. "That's what counts." The documentary closed with a new scene. Jamal, at 14, speaking at a Miracle Kids Foundation gala, his pilot's cap a gift from Captain Sofia Vargas. "I'm gonna fly one day," he told the crowd, "and I'll make sure every kid feels safe up there." The final frame showed the Thompsons on a Horizon flight last year, flawless service. Snacks delivered on time, and Jamal beaming by the window, sketching his hope flyer. As the credits rolled, Aisha wiped tears and Elijah pulled his family close, his heart full. Later, alone in his study, Elijah opened a journal, a habit from their infertility years. He wrote of a dream he'd had the previous night, a vivid vision of a family flight years in the future. Jamal, now a pilot, sat in the cockpit of a sleek jet, Malik as his co-founder managing the airline, and Tariq as the onboard doctor, ensuring every passenger's care. Elijah and Aisha sat in first class, gray-haired but radiant, watching their son soar. The plane, painted with the Miracle Kids logo, flew over a world where prejudice was a fading shadow, where every child's needs were met with kindness. In the dream, Jamal's voice came over the intercom. "Welcome aboard, everyone. This is your captain. We've got snacks for all, and no one's left behind." Elijah woke with tears, the dream so real it felt like a promise. He closed the journal, stepping onto the balcony. The city sprawled below, its lights like stars grounded on Earth. The boys' laughter drifted from the living room, where they planned their futures: Malik's empire, Tariq's clinics, Jamal's skies. Flight 447 had been a crucible, but it had forged something unbreakable, a family that turned pain into purpose, a legacy that would outlive them. Elijah thought of the documentary's final line, spoken by a senator: "The Thompsons didn't just change aviation, they changed what it means to fight for what's right." As he rejoined his family, Aisha slipped her hand into his, their love the root of it all. "We did it," she whispered. "We made the world better for them." Elijah nodded, his eyes on his sons, now debating who'd fly the highest. The skies were theirs, and through them, the world's. The Thompsons' story wasn't just a chapter in history, it was a vow, etched in every heart they'd touched, that courage and love could remake the world, one flight at a time.